Hello again, this is Nelson Ford at the Gunsmith in Phoenix, Arizona. This is really my favorite part because it's easier to do, the question and answers. So, Blackie, as always, I am grateful for you sharing your knowledge with us. I'm about to build a Thesis 1911 build kit. What parts springs would you recommend replacing? I know I want to go with a Colt sear spring. Hate to break your heart, Blackie, but the Thesis come with probably the best copy of a Colt sear spring I've ever seen. I wish other manufacturers in the country would copy the Colt sear spring. It's wonderful. I had to put one in a gun today. I had a gun that had all kinds of problems. They tried to copy Chuck Rogers by drilling a bunch of holes in the trigger bow to lighten up the trigger. All they did is bend the trigger bow all over the place. I had to drop it in a trigger bow straightener, and I got that squared away. But he had, because the trigger was so messed up sticking in there, he had a old Jimmy Clark sear spring. You guys should all know about these. It had 4 leaves instead of 3. It had 3 leaves, and then the center leaf, the disconnect, was cut down the center to create 2 paddles in there. You still had the sear leaf, and you had the grip safety leaf, but they split the disconnect leaf in the middle, and then they took one side and cut it back to about here. So now it was like this, and one of the paddles sat on the disconnect, and the other one sat on the trigger. And Clark Custom came out with that split spring, I think in the mid to late 80s, because all their steel triggers were setting off their guns. The slide would come down, pull the frame forward, and that big heavy steel trigger would try to go back and set the gun off. And so they split the disconnect leaf of the sear spring and then cut one side down so it would sit on the trigger itself. But at any rate, Thesis does a great job making sear springs. If you have a Tommy Wilson jig, you can cut any sear and make it work, unless it's really bad. Most hammers, good quality hammers, work. You know, Thesis does a good job making guns. And let me tell you, it hurts me saying that because I ride a Harley. I'm an American guy. Never owned a foreign car. Okay, let's see. Graveyard. Thanks for doing these videos. Let's see. My question is, how do you feel about the newest Colt 1911s coming out of the factory since CZ acquired them? Model or vintage, would you recommend? They're making the best guns they've ever made. Hands down. The Gold Cup was never so good. The old Gold Cup had the roll pin in there, and I remember when I first went to Cactus Combat League, Gene Christofeld somehow always was able to break that sear spring. That pivot spring. It was first, I think Colt put a solid pin in there, then they went to a roll pin, and it was kind of flimsy. And I think Wilson actually made a little disc that when the slide came all the way back and hit, and then headed back forward, when it hit, the sight would come down. It would make the sight do this thing. So you could figure out where your gun was with your sight on. Then you'd stack or put one of those discs under there to buff it, to keep that from coming down and hitting. But barrel fit, competition was good for Colt. If you took a Gold Cup from the 70s, you could shake it, and there was movement. We could tighten them. Guns shot well. They were great guns. They got rid of the heavy steel trigger and put it in a nylon trigger in their Gold Cups. It's a wider trigger. That made it possible to get rid of the sear depressor and sear depressor spring, which were in the original Gold Cups back in the 70s. So they've solved a lot of problems that they had. The trigger slap, the rear sight. They put on the Bomar BMCS on a brand new Colt today on their cups, and they have a Colt Pony on them, which I love. And I think they're made by Kensite today, but they do a better job than Bomar did. God forgive me for saying that. Bomar was a god of himself. He made a great sight. The BMCS was a great sight. But the Kensite, I think, makes them for Colt, or Colt may have their own contractor, I don't know. But they're putting a great sight on them. They fix the trigger problems, and their slides are always tight. I don't care what model you buy. You can buy a base model. Their slides are fit very well. And so there's nothing wrong with brand new Colts. Enjoy your videos. That's on my first handgun purchase, 586 from Wild Bill's. Sold it. Let's see, 4 weeks away I got. I'm enjoying it. What are your thoughts on the newer model 617s? I fear guns with more than 6 shots. If you look at the lugs on the back of a Smith Revolver, at 6 shot, the lugs are huge. You can hit them with a punch and all and move them to change the timing on one or the other. You can do all kinds of things with them. On the 7 shots and the 8 shots and the 10 shots, they have butter knife lugs in there. I don't know what to say. I have lots of K22 revolvers. All of them are 6 shots. I have to bite my tongue a lot because I love Smith & Wesson, but I would never have a 10 shot. I would never have a 7 or 8 shot. Look at the lugs, the indexing lugs on the back of the Star, and they're not adequate. And 6 shots is what's right. And if somebody needs more than 6 shots on their revolver, they probably need to learn to reload or carry a high cap gun. When I'm traveling, I have a high cap gun, but when I'm walking around my block, I have a 5-shot Smith. And if I can't handle myself in my own neighborhood with a 5-shot, they should probably be allowed to take me. What do you think of the new Colt Python action? It's a little frightening. They did some really cool stuff though. I don't have Smith apart. Yes, I do. There's we'll get rid of the safety bar. There is this cylinder stop right here in the front of the trigger, and it works off the paddle on the front of the trigger. And Colt, I think I covered in the last video we just did, had a very complicated timing system on their bolt. This is very simplistic, and anybody can put them in. You can almost MIM them and put them in and they'll work, as long as you have dimensions correct in other parts. And they put that in the new Colt Python. The only problem I have with the new Colt Python is it's not the old Colt Python, but also they put a transfer bar in there, and the V-spring was always a little weak working that hammer, and it caused ignition failures. And of course the timing system is always slow, and you had to work them. You saw how I retimed the last one in the last video I just did. And they put a transfer bar in there. It's like an automatic transmission in a drag car. It's going to take some energy away from the motor to operate itself. And so with that transfer bar, I was telling somebody in my front room when they brought one in and had me take it apart and talk to them about it. And a customer in my store, I said, you're going to have problems with ignition with this gun because they already have double action ignition failures, and this transfer bar is going to rob energy from it. And the guy waiting to see me next in my lobby started laughing in a chair, and he said, you should watch another guy, another YouTube guy. He just did a test on him, and he had ignition failures on double action. I was able to spot that without even shooting the gun. They're okay. They look cool. My brother-in-law bought one because he wanted to have a Colt Python. Is the King Sight Company Super Target, only made by Colt in 1956. They're kind of cool, but the Smith revolvers are the best. I find myself saying that all the time. Beautifang, thanks for all the awesome videos. My Colt Diamondback question on the last video. I have another concerning frame grip repairs. Where did you get the stay grips on that I-frame video? A friend of mine said, I got a pair of I-frame grips, you want them? And I said, you can't believe this. So I just bought one and I can use them. Can black grips that are cracked on a 32 hand injector model, 5th change, be reinforced with Bondo epoxy? People are constantly gluing grips back together. And you can do it with super glue. You can do it with anything. The way they break is people over tighten them. So when you put them back on, don't over tighten them. Hi, Mr. Ford, great channel. Would like to know how you do a trigger job on a S&W revolver. I would watch my videos. I really give it all up on Smith & Wesson K-frame revolver tuning. It applies to all the guns. There's a part 1 and part 2. They're pretty comprehensive. Take a look at those and see what you think. I can't imagine people doing this stuff at home, but I know there are people far more talented than I am, and I have learned that over my life. And so if you think you can handle it, do it.
He wants to know if there's a difference between a carry gun and a competition gun for a trigger job. Do you do differently?
No, you want them all to fire. If you're in competition, it's not as serious as carry, obviously. Carry, your life could be in imminent danger. But if you're taking time out on your weekend to drive somewhere with all your reloads that you spent the prior night loading, and you're going to go out and shoot just to have misfires, you'll be embarrassed in front of your friends, and they'll want to know where you had your gun worked on, or why didn't you seat your primers, or what the problem was. And so carry and actually I do bump. Sometimes people say they're going to carry on the K-frames, the firing pin on the hammer that I've loaded with the spring. You can run those at 38 with American-made primers, 40-42 with some high primers and maybe CCIs. But if it's law enforcement, I'm probably going to go with 40 ounces. And that's just on the K-frame. On my tuning videos, I did put up a chart that had all the different weights, and you can figure it out from there. Let's see, how about a discussion on the Woodsman and its variants? Challenger, Huntsman, Match Target. I have all 3 of those, and I love them, and they're great. And I will do a video on them because I'm going to start running out of stuff, and I'll get there, and I'll do your automatics. I have a Colt new service with a weak trigger return. Is it possible to replace the V-spring? First thing I do is I try to. You can, believe it or not, you think you adjust the V-spring and it affects both sides. But the way it sits in the frame, the top purchase and bottom purchase, I think I was grabbing the V-spring, I don't have one here, with a set of copper pennies, not all the way at the back, because if you try to spread them out, you'll split them. They'll just break, you're like a wishbone. And so I think I use a penny and I grab both of them at the same time in the vise tightly so that they're both free to be adjusted, heavier or lighter. They'll take a bend. And if the bottom one, if your trigger return's not working, trap it. Trap that spring. They're not big like my fingers, they're real small and tight. Trap it with a couple of pre-1981 pennies. They're real copper. And then if you need to use a punch, like a fat brass punch on the bottom one, and then use the hammer and hit it and watch your vise. Your vices are all marked up and have stuff all over them. You can see if it's moved. You watch where it's sitting, and when you hit it, you'll see it move, and you need to move it a little bit at a time. Try it again, see what happens. You'll get that spring to work. I don't think the V-spring on the Python is the same, because that's out of a smaller frame. And so you need the big spring. And if you have a new service, good for you. Not a lot of people have them. Let's see what else we have. Trouble with a para ordnance, double stack, 40 cal. I'm so glad that I have enough work that I don't have to work on that stuff anymore. The best man that I know on automatics, and he doesn't take this kind of work. He just builds what he builds, and people buy him or they don't. It's Chuck Rogers, and he tried to explain to me how the round has to be so long, 1.25 inches, to work in a government, a 1911. And when you go down to the 9, they have that little bolster in the magazine that it's supposed to hold the 9 forward. They have the long ejector. They have all kinds of things. 40 falls in that same category. Plus the double stack. It's all crazy on those pairs. We did a lot of pairs in the very late 80s. Then we could just buy the aluminum frame, and you had to put it on a Colt gun. And a 40 para double stack. There are guys that'll take that on, and when I was younger and didn't have any work, I would have taken it on and I would have made that thing work. But my mind is all bent out from having to work on all kinds of crazy stuff that I just don't even want to go there anymore. No offense. Is it me, or are Colt revolvers complicated? If you're talking about the brand new ones, I don't work on them. If you're talking about the old V-springs like we covered in our last video, 2 videos ago, they are complicated. And I think I've said, you know, the elbow bone's connected to the thigh bone, the thigh bone's connected to the this. You move one part on that gun and it affects another part, and you'll find the other part's harder to adjust than the part you just adjusted. And you try to drop in new parts and you find out none of them will fit. So I would stay out of Colt revolvers. And if you're talking about the new ones, I don't know anything about them and never will. Dear sir, 78 28.2 ejector rod screws to the right to loosen. It's a left-hand thread. So you screw to the left. No, you screw to the right to loosen. You're right. Good man. This 6-inch in my chicken hand loads do it for this older and should be legal individual. Just can't say enough about swanky revolvers. Ricky, you sound like a great guy. Have fun with your gun. You're on the right track. Here's a guy, Andrew. Does that 8 pounds force vary depending on how tight the gun is? Like with match fit bushing or brand new gun would be more. The 8 pounds to strip around. You know, all you have to do is put some rounds through the gun, a few hundred, and it's going to be loose. It's going to be fine. But it should be around 8 pounds to strip the round, because that was a long time ago. My daughter was younger than my granddaughter at the time that I did that, but I do remember that 8 pounds was the magic number to strip rounds out of the magazine. And so I like stock guns and stock weights and stock everything. Trigger pulls I like around 4 pounds. I like the guns to feed. I use the McGivern gold bead. Some people like fiber optics. Night sights are totally useless. They work at night only, and they go out in a few years, so they don't have any longevity. But as far as the springs on them, I like to use the stock springs and ammunition that's pretty close to stock, except for in big revolvers. I load them with 5 grains of bullseye for 750 feet per second, so my hands don't break. So that's all I'm going to do on questions tonight. I really enjoy your questions. Keep them coming. Good night.